Now it says here in terms of the cows, very beautiful picture. After good rains, this is 5,000 years ago, the grazing ground for the animals was full of green pasture, and both the bulls and the cows sat down on the grass fully satisfied. The cows, followed by their calves, appeared tired of grazing because of full milk bags. Calmly and quietly, the cows and calves rested and ruminated, chewing their cud. Like that. How many stomachs does a cow have? 4. I think 4, yeah. And one of them is not really, actually a storage sack. In the morning when the grass is fresh and cool, they harvest it. And they chew it enough to put it in their little storage place in there. You see them later in the day when they sit down under the trees, some shade, okay, they just start like that, pushing it back up. They chew on it and all the juice comes out, and then, it goes on like that, so on. It's a very incredible machine. A cow is an incredible machine. Like that. So then Prabhupada says, protection and grazing ground for the cows are among the essential needs for society. Yeah. It's interesting because over here you can't build anything, right? It might turn into a good pasture land for cows, right? Yeah? Might get the property and have a nice grazing ground for some cows and stuff. Be careful of getting stuck in the water, but maybe Krishna has a plan like that. So many times we've seen that the properties that devotees get for temples, it was already planned. Krishna already knew where he was going to be and everything else. And devotees was kind of like, yeah, I want a temple here, I want a little few cows in front of my temple, like that. Okay. Pasturing, protection for the cows and grazing grounds are essential needs for society and the welfare of people in general. The animal fat required for the human body can be well derived from cow's milk. Okay? Cow's milk is very important for human energy, and the economic development of society depends on sufficient food grains, sufficient milk, and sufficient transportation. My God. Transportation and distribution of these products. Okay, what is it? Sufficient milk, sufficient grains, and transportation and distribution. Lord Sri Krishna, by his personal example, taught us the importance of cow protection, which is meant not only for the Indian climate, but for all human beings all over the universe. Yeah. Less intelligent people underestimate the value of cow's milk. Cow's milk is also called go ras, or the juice from the body of the cow. Milk is the most valuable form of go ras, and from milk we can prepare many important and valuable foodstuffs for the upkeep of the human body. The killing of cows by human society is one of the grossest suicidal policies. Wow, okay. The killing of cows by human society is one of the grossest suicidal policies. And those who are anxious to cultivate the human spirit must turn their attention first toward the question of cow protection. Die. Cow protection, die. Yeah. So, of course, one big thing that's happening now is many devotees are also becoming vegan. Vegan. Right? And of course the term is also kind of a general term in some ways, but it means usually no milk products. What else? No dairy products. Like that, basically like that. And so people say, well, there are many different aspects of it. Because one aspect is the milk we get a lot of times from these dairies is actually very contaminated. Like that. Baskin Robbins ice cream, is that here? Mm-hmm. Yeah, in America it was a gigantic chain like that. The guy was one of the king of like ice cream chains. So his son grew up in this whole environment. And in the backyard they had a swimming pool shaped like an ice cream cone. So he was supposed to take over the whole empire, everything else. But then he began to discover where the milk was coming from, just a little bit. And after that he started, this is not nice, this is terrible, So he began to investigate more, and he said actually he wanted just to give it up because it was so like horrifying. But he went ahead because of courage and everything else. And finally he wrote a book called, what's it called? Diet for a New America? It's called Diet for a New America. John Robbins. And it was so incredible, you know, that all the other books on vegetarianism and animal rights, almost kind of like this, you know, pay your obeisances and like that. Everything was so complete, you know. He took his father's, you know, very complete, qualified nature and turned it against his father in some ways. So he went through this whole thing. It's a wonderful book, very good. But I think still it's like, you know, hard to beat. He went through the ethical and moral dimension, you know, of animal slaughter in the dairy industry. He went through the health aspect of meat eating and dairy. He went through the fact that animals are people, like that. The economics, everything, very systematically. You know? And so many things like that. For example, it's just even more studies now that meat eating is so systematically related to different diseases like that, especially breast cancer. It's just like you have 40% more chance of getting breast cancer or something if you're eating meat and not. It's just one after another like that. The health factors like that. So practically speaking, it's pretty easy to substantiate that meat is not a good diet, you know, for human beings like that. Then in terms of animals, well, animals are just, you know, just meat. They don't have a soul, right? Only human beings have souls, like that and so on. So you get so many things, stories of the history of animals and how they're, you know, how they're people. You know? For example, there was one lady. She was in her boat. This was several people going across the Pacific Ocean, one sailboat, and she fell off like that. And the boat goes away with her screaming at night. Nobody notices, so she's floating in the water, and I'm going to drown. And she's kind of swimming and hanging on there, and then suddenly something's pushing her up. And what is it? It was a big sea turtle, like this big, and she was, of course, terrified. Ah! But you know, the guy didn't grab her and eat her, and what are you going to do? You know, so she kind of like stayed in the back of the sea turtle. She just was traveling. And the sea turtle swam for something like about, you know, 6 hours, and finally came right to a light buoy on a channel. Because in the ocean there are these buoys with these, you know, they're floating with lights on top. And the ships follow these, they're traveling like that and so on. So it took her right there, and she got off of him and swam over and climbed up on the thing. And of course, after some time, when ship came by and found her, but it didn't go away. It kept on swimming around until actually some boat came like that, and then it went away like that. So this is a true story like that. You know? And these guys never stay above the water for more than maybe like 10 minutes like that and so on. You know? Other stories, turtles saving people. One veterinarian was in New York, and he got a good offer for a job in Los Angeles. Now, if you know New York and Los Angeles, how many miles is this? About 3,000 miles. You know? But it wasn't going to be very, very practical to take his dog, so he left his dog in New York. Okay. And he was there in Los Angeles for several months, working everything else. And one day he came home, you know, it was hot, everything else. And there was a dog on his porch. You know? And look at the dog, and it had like, you know, briars and all this stuff, and it was obviously been outside for a long time and everything else. But it looked like his dog. Like that, you know, what is this? You know? So he opened the door. The dog ran inside and hopped up right on its favorite chair and sat there like that. You know, it was ridiculous. You know. So then he knew his dog. He'd done some surgery on it. So he looked down there. The scar was right there. Okay. So somehow this dog had traveled 3,000 miles and found the guy. Okay. Cut him up. Have him for dinner. Yeah. One more story. This is about Jack. You know Jack? Okay. So Jack was a dolphin. And there's places, one channel like in north of England, where there's a lot of rocks and stuff like that. It's really kind of dangerous to go through, especially the tides are moving and stuff, and a lot of ships got damaged. But there were some porpoises that stay there. And one porpoise named Jack would lead these ships through like that, you know, so on. You know? So he'd come and he would hop out of the water, and then he would just follow them like that. You know? And if you know, you usually have to wait a little bit. He'd come in, they had their boat, and they would stop and kind of just let their motors run, and he would show up, and he would just, you know, take them through like that and so on. So unbeknownst to the crew, one guy was just traveling as a passenger, and he thought he would shoot the dolphin like that. So he shot it with a gun. And the crew wanted to kill the guy and everything else like that and so on. And after that, there was no Jack, you know, to lead the boat through. And so a couple ships, maybe 2 or 3 actually, you know, had crashed and everything else like that, and had other problems like that. You know? But after some time, Jack showed up again, like that. It was a scar on his body, you know. And again, he was leading the ship through, but he would not lead the ship through where this guy had shot it. When they shot him, he could recognize. He refused them. Find your own fish, like that. You know? So there's a whole section on this, that animals are people, and in some ways it seems they're better, you know, more sophisticated than we are. They have abilities and natures and things that we don't have, even like that. So you can't say we're on higher level on the food chain.